My name is Vivian Carter. I am 32 years old, and I live in South Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in a narrow row house that still smells like the fried onions from the corner deli downstairs. I work nights as a radiology tech at Jefferson Methodist, the kind of job where you learn to speak softly and move fast because pain does not wait for daylight. Most people at work think I am calm. They do not know that every time a train horn drifts across the river, my stomach tightens like a fist. I was 5 the day my mother left me in a station. I did not know it was a station then. I just knew it was loud, crowded, and full of adult legs that kept bumping my shoulders. My mother, Nora Blake, had bought me a pink lollipop for my birthday. The sugar was melting down the stick, sticky on my fingers, and I remember staring at that shine because it felt safer than looking at faces. She told me to stand by a vending machine and be good. She said she would be right back. She touched the top of my head like she was checking a box on a list. Minutes became hours. My shoes pinched. My knees shook. I practiced being invisible the way scared kids do, quiet and small, hoping the world would forget to hurt me. Then I saw her again, not coming for me, but hurrying past with my little brother, Mason, held tight by the wrist. She was whispering, sharp and frantic, and I heard my own name like a slap. Vivian is trouble. Vivian is bad luck. Do not look back. That is the moment my childhood split into two versions. The one where a mother loses her way, the other where a mother makes a choice. The police found me, eventually. A kind couple tried to help. A stranger tried to take a boy and run, and I screamed until my throat burned. People love to tell that part like it makes the ending neat. Like bravery is a clean ribbon you can tie around trauma. But I can still taste the metal of fear when I think about it. What nobody tells you is that abandonment does not end when the paperwork starts. It lives in your bones. It shows up in how you count money twice, in how you flinch when someone says we need to talk, in how you never fully believe a door is really yours to open. Last month, a letter arrived on my kitchen table. Cream paper, legal font, my name spelled correctly for once. It said my biological mother had filed a petition to re-establish contact, and that she was requesting a hearing. I read it 3 times before my hands stopped shaking. Then I did what I always do when the past comes knocking. I went to work, I swallowed my panic, and I waited for the lights to flicker. The first people who ever called me Vivian were not my parents. They were strangers with kind voices and cautious hands, people trained to speak to children like glass that might crack if held too tightly. By the time I learned their names, my own last name had already changed once. Carter came later. Before that, I was just a file, a case number, a child with no adult willing to sign the line that said responsibility. The foster home smelled like bleach and overcooked pasta. Mrs. Reynolds ran it like a system, not a family. There were charts on the fridge, quiet hours posted on doors, and rules that applied to everyone equally, which meant no one was special. At 5, I thought that was what safety looked like. No favorites meant no one could be taken away from you out of jealousy. I learned how to fold my clothes into tight squares and line my shoes under the bed so no one could accuse me of being difficult. At night, when the house finally went still, I pressed my ear to the pillow and listened for footsteps that never came. I did not cry for my mother. I cried for the version of myself that still believed she would return. 2 years later, I was placed with Daniel and Rebecca Carter. They were not rich. They were not particularly warm at first. Daniel worked maintenance for the city, and Rebecca was a school secretary who always smelled faintly of copier toner and mint gum. They had one rule they repeated like a mantra: say what you need, even if it is uncomfortable. I nodded every time, even though I had no idea how to do that. The Carters never pretended to be my real parents. They never asked me to call them mom and dad. They let the relationship grow like something fragile, something that needed light but not force. Rebecca showed me how to pack lunches. Daniel taught me how to ride a bike and how to check the oil in a car, even though I was 8 and could barely see over the hood. When I woke from nightmares, they sat on the edge of the bed and waited until my breathing slowed. They did not tell me everything would be okay. They said, "I am here." That was enough. Still, I learned early not to want too much. I did well in school because praise felt safer than attention. Teachers liked me. Social workers called me resilient. The word followed me for years like a badge I never asked for. Resilient children, I learned, were expected to carry more without complaint. When Rebecca and Daniel officially adopted me, there was a cake and photos and a judge who smiled for the camera. Everyone clapped. I smiled too, because that was what good kids did. But a small, quiet part of me stayed 5 years old, standing by a vending machine, counting the cracks in the floor. The letter arrived 25 years later, on a Tuesday, when the sky was low and gray, and my shift had ended badly. A pediatric patient had coded. We brought him back, but the sound of his mother crying in the hallway stayed with me all the way home. I did not check the mail until I had showered and changed and reheated leftovers I barely touched. It was waiting on the counter, where I always sorted the bills. Cream envelope, no return address, I recognized. My full legal name typed neatly across the front, Vivian Carter. No nickname, no mistakes. I sat down before I opened it. Some instincts never leave you. The letter was polite, cold, written by a family law firm in Delaware County. It informed me that my biological mother, Nora Blake, had filed a petition to re-establish contact and was requesting a hearing to discuss potential reconciliation and rights. The words were careful, legal, stripped of emotion. They did not mention that she had abandoned me. They did not mention the station. They did not mention the years she never looked for me. I read it again, slower this time. My hands shook so badly I had to set the paper down. I had known this day might come. Social workers had warned me when I was a teenager that biological parents sometimes resurface. Rebecca had asked me once, gently, what I would want if that happened. I had shrugged and said I did not know. The truth was I had imagined it 1,000 times, and every version ended differently. In none of them did I feel ready. I called Rebecca first, then Daniel. Their voices grounded me the way they always had. Rebecca did not rush to give advice. She asked how I felt. I hated that question, because the answer was everything at once. Inga. Fear. A small, traitorous flicker of hope I did not want to admit existed. That night, I barely slept. Memories came back in fragments. The weight of the lollipop stick. My brother's small hand disappearing into hers. The way she did not turn around. In the weeks that followed, more documents arrived. Requests. Notices. A scheduled preliminary hearing. I learned that Nora had another child, older than me now, and that she was struggling financially. I learned that she claimed she had been coerced, that she had been young and afraid, that she had always intended to come back. The language shifted depending on who was reading it. Regret when it needed sympathy. Confusion when it needed doubt. What unsettled me most was how familiar it all felt. At work, I moved through my shifts on autopilot. At home, I found myself locking the door twice. I started carrying my phone everywhere, checking it compulsively. Abandonment teaches you to watch for exits. It teaches you that stability can vanish without warning. One evening, as I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by paperwork, I noticed a line in one of the filings that made my chest tighten. It stated that my adoption records had a clerical inconsistency regarding consent timelines. It was minor, probably meaningless, but it was enough to crack something open. For the first time since the letter arrived, I stopped reacting and started paying attention. Because if there was one thing resilience had actually taught me, it was this: people rarely return to your life out of love alone. They return because they need something. And whatever Nora Blake wanted from me now, I knew it was not forgiveness. Nora Blake did not show up to my life with apologies. She showed up with preparation. Her first message came through the attorney, not directly to me. It was a request for a private meeting, framed as an opportunity for closure. The language was soft, carefully neutral, as if we were two colleagues with unresolved business instead of a mother and the child she had left behind. My lawyer forwarded it with a single line: "We do not have to agree to anything yet." That night, I dreamed of the station again. Only this time, when I looked up from my sticky hands, it was my adult self standing there, watching the little girl wait. I agreed to the meeting. We met in a conference room with glass walls and a long, scarred table that smelled faintly of old coffee. I chose the seat closest to the door. Nora arrived 10 minutes early. which I noticed immediately. She had aged in a way that felt deliberate, gray threaded neatly through her hair. Simple clothes, no jewelry except a thin gold band. She stood when I entered, hands clasped, eyes already wet. "Vivian," she said, like she had practiced the sound of it. I did not hug her. I did not tell her it was okay. I sat down and waited. She spoke first, of course. She talked about fear, about being young, about making impossible choices. She said she had thought about me every day. She said she had searched, that systems had failed her, that people had lied. She said my brother Mason had asked about me for years. She cried when she said his name, as if that might soften the distance between us. I listened and said very little. I noticed the way her story curved around responsibility without ever landing on it. How abandonment became confusion. How choice became circumstance. At one point, she reached across the table and stopped herself, pulling her hand back as if burned. "I know I do not deserve anything," she said. "I just want to know you." That was the first lie. Over the next few weeks, she became a presence. Cards arrived, emails, carefully worded messages that asked about my job, my health, my childhood with the Carters. She praised them, almost excessively. She thanked them for raising me well, which sat wrong in my chest, like someone complimenting a house they had set on fire. Then the requests began to change shape. She asked if I had health insurance. She asked if I had student loans. She asked if I had ever wondered where I came from, medically, genetically. She mentioned that Mason had a condition, nothing serious, but expensive. She asked if I would consider meeting him. I did not answer right away. Daniel noticed the tension before I said anything. He had always been good at reading the quiet spaces. One evening, as we sat on their back porch, he asked me a question he had never asked before. "What do you think she wants?" The answer came to me fully formed. Anxious. Anxious to me, to my stability, to whatever she believed I owed her for surviving. The legal filings confirmed it. Nora had amended her petition. She was no longer asking just for contact. She was asking to challenge the terms of my adoption, citing the inconsistency I had noticed earlier. She claimed she had not been in a sound mental state when she signed the relinquishment papers. She implied coercion without naming it. She requested mediation, shared decision-making, and, buried near the end, potential financial consideration related to family obligations. It was dressed up as reconciliation. It was leverage. I felt the old fear crawl up my spine. The part of me that had learned to be good, to be quiet, to not make trouble, whispered that maybe this was my fault. Maybe if I had been more patient, kinder, more forgiving. Then my lawyer called. She explained it slowly, methodically. Nora's case was weak, but weak cases could still cause damage, delays, stress, public records, the kind of mess that bleeds into your life and stains everything it touches. My lawyer asked if I was prepared for that. I thought of the station, of the years I spent believing love was something you earned by being easy to keep. I thought of Rebecca sitting on the edge of my bed, saying I am here without conditions. "I am prepared," I said. Nora requested another meeting. This time she brought Mason. He looked like me. That was the cruelest part. Same dark eyes, same mouth. He smiled when he saw me, tentative, hopeful, as if I were a missing puzzle piece that had finally clicked into place. I felt something ache and twist inside my chest. Nora watched us closely, like a chess player tracking pieces. "See," she said softly, "family is still possible." That was when I understood the full shape of her plan. This was not about the past. This was about rewriting the future in a way that centered her needs. She had not come back to make amends. She had come back to claim. I did not confront her then. I smiled politely. I said I needed time. I walked away with my composure intact and my heart pounding so hard it hurt. At home that night, I opened the old box Rebecca kept in the hall closet. Inside were documents from my adoption, letters from social workers, notes written in careful handwriting. I read everything, slowly, thoroughly. I cross-referenced dates. I made copies. If Nora wanted to drag me back into her version of motherhood, she was going to find out that the child she left behind had grown into someone who paid attention. And this time, I was not going to wait by the door. Preparation changes fear into focus. Once I stopped hoping Nora would suddenly become a different person, everything sharpened. I took time off work and treated my life like a case file. I highlighted dates. I built timelines. I compared signatures. The clerical inconsistency she was leaning on turned out to be exactly what my lawyer suspected: a delay between the initial relinquishment form and the final filing, caused by a hospital transfer and a weekend closure. Annoying. Procedural. Documented. More importantly, there was something Nora had not counted on. She had signed a supplemental affidavit 3 months after she left me. It was voluntary. It was detailed. It stated clearly that she did not wish to be contacted and that any future attempts would be considered disruptive. The language was blunt, almost cold. Whoever helped her draft it had known exactly what they were doing. My lawyer smiled for the first time when she read it. Nora escalated anyway. She stopped pretending the contact was about healing. Her emails grew firmer. She asked about financial assistance for Mason's treatment. She framed it as family stepping up. When I did not respond, she implied that refusal would be noted by the court. She began referencing the stress of the process, how exhausting it was for everyone, how cooperation could make things easier. That word again. Easier. The hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning. I wore a navy suit Rebecca helped me pick out years ago for my first professional interview. It still fit. That felt symbolic. Daniel drove me to the courthouse, silent but steady, his presence like an anchor. Nora arrived with her attorney and Mason. She looked smaller than I remembered, more tired, but her eyes were sharp, calculating. She nodded at me like we were partners in a negotiation instead of adversaries in a reckoning. The judge was a woman with gray hair and a voice that cut cleanly through noise. She listened more than she spoke. Nora's attorney presented the case as a tragic misunderstanding, a young mother, mental distress, regret, a desire to reconnect before time ran out. When it was our turn, my lawyer did not raise her voice. She did not dramatize. She laid the documents out like facts that spoke for themselves: the affidavit, the timelines, the medical clearance Nora had received before signing, the record showing no attempts at contact for over 2 decades, the emails requesting money under the guise of reconciliation. The room shifted. Nora interrupted once, then twice. The judge warned her. On the third interruption, the judge looked directly at her and asked a simple question. Blake, why now?" Nora hesitated. Just long enough. The answer that followed was a mess of emotion and deflection. She spoke about hardship, about responsibility, about how children owe their parents understanding. She never said she was sorry. The judge denied the petition, not dramatically, not cruelly, just firmly. She ruled that the adoption was valid, that there were no grounds for revisiting custody or obligation, and that further contact would require my consent. She advised Nora to respect the boundary and suggested she seek support elsewhere. Nora looked at me then, really looked at me, like she was seeing the consequence of her choices for the first time. Mason was crying quietly beside her. I felt a flicker of grief for him, for the innocent part of all this, but it did not bend my resolve. Outside the courthouse, Nora tried one last time. She stepped toward me, voice low and urgent. "Vivian, please. I am still your mother." I shook my head. "You were," I said. "Then you made a decision?" "I am just honoring it." I walked away before she could answer. That night, I went back to my row house in South Philly. I cooked a real meal. I opened the windows. The city noise felt normal again, grounding. When a train horn sounded in the distance, my chest tightened, but it loosened just as quickly. I was no longer waiting. The girl with the melting lollipop had grown up. She had learned that love is not something you beg for, and family is not defined by who claims you, but by who stays. For the first time, the past felt finished, and the future felt like mine. People like to ask me if I regret it. They ask if I ever lie awake at night, wondering what would have happened if I had said yes, if I had opened the door wider, if I had let Nora Blake back into my life in some gentler way. The question is always asked softly, as if regret is the most natural response to survival. The truth is simpler and harder to accept. I do not regret protecting myself. For a long time, I believed forgiveness meant access, that being the bigger person meant absorbing pain quietly so others could feel whole. That belief did not come from kindness. It came from fear. Fear that love was conditional. Fear that if I said no, I would be abandoned all over again. What the hearing taught me was something I should have learned much earlier. Boundaries are not cruelty, they are clarity. Nora did not lose me because I refused to help her. She lost me the day she decided I was expendable. Everything that followed was just paperwork catching up to a truth that had already been written. Mason wrote to me once, months later, a short message. Polite, careful. He said he hoped I was doing well. I replied kindly and briefly. I did not offer more than I could give without disappearing myself. That balance is something I am still learning. Rebecca keeps a photo of me on her desk at work. Daniel texts me pictures of broken things he fixes and says they reminded him of me. Ordinary love. Quiet love. The kind that does not require proof or sacrifice to exist. Some nights, when my shift runs late, I walk home past the tracks. The trains still come and go. People still wait. Candy still melts in small hands somewhere. The world keeps moving whether you are ready or not. But now, when I hear the horn, I do not feel small. I think of the girl I was, standing alone, believing she had been forgotten. I think of the woman I became, reading legal documents at her kitchen table, choosing herself without apology. I wish I could reach back through time and tell that child one thing: you are not unlovable. You were just left by someone who did not know how to stay. My life did not turn out perfect. It turned out honest, and that is enough. I am Vivian Carter. I am 32 years old. I live in South Philadelphia. I help people see what is broken so it can be treated. I built a life that does not depend on anyone rewriting my story for me. Whatever role they thought I was supposed to play, I declined it. This is the version of me that stayed.